Organizational Changes in Employee Attitudes by Alyssia Baylis, Courtney Madden, Jessica Guice, and Megan McManus. Louisiana State University, LHRD 7002, Group P. Introduction. As workplaces are ever evolving, organizations must make changes to remain competitive in today's market. In a modern world, organizations are increasingly required to improve their ability to enhance employees' support or acceptance for change initiatives. To successfully implement change initiatives, change agents must understand that the role of employees is essential to the outcome of the efforts. Because the success of change relies on employee support, human resource development is responsible for helping guide employee attitudes as the HR function of the company has integral responsibilities to improve the success rate of company changes. HRD professionals are responsible for helping guide employee attitudes in order to improve the success rate of company changes, including employees' cognition and emotions, communication, and participation in decision-making. Findings of previous research indicate that focusing on employee reactions, including resistance and acceptance, during organizational change is of utmost importance to the success of the initiative. The question remains as how to build positive employee emotional responses to change so as to enhance employee change readiness. People who are open to change are actively involved in finding the meaning of changes and are effectively committed to cooperating with the new organizational goals. They have positive attitudes and behaviors towards change initiatives and implementations. Organizations use HRD best practices to drive strategic organizational change, but little is known about how these efforts affect employee attitudes about change. Previous research has focused on individuals' beliefs about change, and other research has focused on the outcomes of change but does not consider how change is communicated or which HRD tactics are related to the results. The purpose of this study is to explore the relationship between HRD change management and individual employee attitudes related to change. Research question number 1. What is the relationship between HRD change management and individual employee attitudes related to change? Research question number 2. How can employee attitudes towards change be shifted, and what changes in behaviors do employees make? The study will take place at a 7,000 employee manufacturing company based in Texas. The study will involve a total of 100 randomly selected employees from 5 different departments affected by an organizational development-led business process transformation. The researchers would conduct a 2-phase research method. Phase 1 would last for 30 days and would be used to administer and analyze quantitative data. The second phase would begin 60 days after change initiatives have been implemented. The self-reported attitudes are the dependent variable, and the HRD tactics are the independent variable. If organizational innovations and change are to represent one strategy for improving productivity and the quality of working life, then we need to understand the forces that lead to long-run organizational change. Methods. The researchers for this proposed study will conduct mixed methods research. The researchers chose a mixed methods approach because once the relationship between change and employee attitudes were established, it was important for the researchers to understand the degree of the shift. The researchers used a sequential explanatory design to use qualitative results to assist in interpreting and explaining the findings of the qualitative findings. A correlational analysis was chosen to analyze the quantitative data. This analysis examined the relationship between how change initiatives are perceived and employee attitudes regarding change management initiatives. For the qualitative research, a phenomenological method was chosen to understand the commonality of experience between all participants. This research design was chosen to examine the relationship between how change initiatives are perceived and employee attitudes regarding change management initiatives. To track the influence of organizational change, change should be characterized by specifying which attributes of the context affect individuals' behaviors, effects, and cognitions. The sample the research team used was 100 employees. The eligible participants had to be employed with the company full-time and had to have been employed for 2 years or more. These employees included frontline, supervisory, and managerial staff. For the purpose of this research, senior leaders such as the C-suite, VPs, executives, and directors were excluded. All surveys were administered electronically through a web-based service. The sample was random and non-stratified and was measured using a 5-point Likert scale, with 1 being strongly agree and 5 being strongly disagree. The statistical procedure used for analysis was Pearson's correlation coefficient. These are a few sample questions that were asked to each participant. These types of questions were chosen to gauge each employee's attitude on not only change in general, but also their attitude on change related to the project. 60 days after the change project had been implemented, researchers would meet with the same 100 employees on site to perform interviews. These interviews would be face-to-face and recorded. The interviews would feature open-ended questions designed to assess the employee's attitude and uncover the degree of the shift. The procedure used to analyze the research data is transcription. Here are a few sample questions that were asked to each participant. These were designed to have the participants express their feelings about the actual change and relay how it may have been different from what they originally perceived. The researchers used the Rausch model to test the validity of the research. The research was deemed valid because it had been tested in prior research, and the researchers were measuring the construct validity. The research is assumed reliable because all questions were modeled on the 2009 research that was presented in the article, Organizational Change Questionnaire, Climate of Change, Processes, and Readiness, Development of a New Instrument. Those researchers were expanding upon past tested research. Findings. Previous research has identified organizational factors that have been shown to increase employees' openness to change. The open-ended questions of Phase 2 of the study are designed to help understand how participants perceive change relative to how effective the HRD interventions were perceived to be. If the employees perceive the change to be positive, we hypothesize the change initiative will be positive. Likewise, if the employees perceive the change to be negative, the change initiative will be negative. The second hypothesis is that the employee will perceive the change as positive when they perceive the communication is frequent and honest. While this proposed study builds upon previous research to further pinpoint the most effective HRD practices for managing employee attitudes during organizational change, the researchers hypothesize that communication will positively influence employee perceptions. More specifically, social information processing theory suggests that employee attitudes are influenced by social information, the evaluations of situational characteristics like the dimensions of the job environment, and employees' past behavior. Ishii wrote that earlier studies focused on the outcomes of communication to external audience. With the emergence of internal communication tools like email, intranet, and Yammer, so has internal communication emerged as a tactic for successful employee adoption of change. The potential impact of the research, assuming future studies confirm this study's expected findings, could help organizations better support employees during change by employing the HRD practices that best shape employee morale during organizational change. As Fabriani and Yancey wrote, as consultants and problem solvers, it is important for HR practitioners to assist the new organization in resolving the problems that emerge. Limitations. One limitation of the study is that researchers had no influence on the HRD strategies and tactics used as part of this business process improvement initiative. According to Rader and Borkova, there are two HRD practices, communication and autonomy, that are related to employees showing an effective commitment to change. Employees with a commitment to change are more likely to support organizational change because of the associated advantages. Conversely, other studies have suggested communication, staffing, and rewards correlated positively affect One limitation of the study is that researchers had no influence on the HRD strategies and tactics used as part of this business process improvement initiative. According to Rader and Borkova, there are two HRD practices, communication and autonomy, that are related to employees showing an effective commitment to change. Employees with a commitment to change are more likely to support organizational change because of the associated advantages. Conversely, other studies have suggested communications, staffing, and rewards positively affect employee attitudes about change. But other HRD best practices, like career and performance development and training, failed to show an effect. If researchers were empowered to select the HRD practices involved, they could better understand the effectiveness of individual tactics. In a study of HRM practices, Conway and Monks found that only communication and rewards were positively related to effective commitment to change. Changes may be perceived as negative by employees if they feel they are disproportionately affected by the change. When the organizational change increases the workload or takes away advantages the individuals used to enjoy, the negative reactions are almost immediate. This is because individuals understand it as a threat and typically experience suffering, anxiety, and stress. The cost associated with face-to-face interviews is another limitation of the study. In future research, it may be difficult for researchers to find an organization willing to require participation from their employees. Another potential limitation of the study is that researchers do not intend to pre-screen participants to weed out those who may already have a preference for change. Many other academic research has identified this as a gap in existing research. In cognitive beliefs and positive emotions about change, relationships with employee change readiness, and change supportive behaviors, Rafferty and Minbashian wrote, another area of future research that should be considered is whether other attitudes, such as commitment to change, mediate relationships between change beliefs and emotions and change supportive and resistant behaviors. It would be useful to compare the strength of relationships between different change attitude constructs and change behaviors to identify which of these constructs is the best predictor of change behaviors.